Okay, what's going on guys? In today's video we're going to go over camera settings. Now if you want to see more information regarding camera settings, including the comparisons, make sure you check out our Patreon series, patreon.com/Neil guys, FIFA School, link is down below in the description. But I just want to give you the updated stuff on the camera angles, what's the best ones to use, and some general questions people have been asking me that I've covered over time. Now, when it comes to camera angles, before we move on to, for example, the visual indicator being bigger and how can it make the camera easier to see, especially from distance, there's only really two camera angles I would recommend. Okay, I would say co-op, in my opinion, is the best camera. Even pros use this camera. It's the best camera all around, I would say, just generally as a rule of thumb. But a lot of people still use telebroadcast. Now you have to kind of go back to a couple of years. Now I actually use telebroadcast myself a lot, and it also depends on the size of your monitor. So going back, it's kind of like ball relative. People use telebroadcast and ball relative because they are used to it. That's pretty much it. So you see a lot of the pro players, they have something of this nature. They might have 0 zoom and have something like, 15 high or something like that. Now this is fine. But the problem is that they look at the radar most of the time. So you have to ask yourself, do you look at the radar at the bottom of the screen? Now it's fine to glance here and there, but when you're playing with telebroadcast, you have to actively glance at the radar all the time. And that is what I'd recommend up until you get to a very, very high level. Even then I would still use co-op, because co-op, you can see everything on the pitch. You can see where your player is, you can see where left back is, where your right back is. Now, the good thing with co-op is you barely have to look at the radar. You still have to look at the radar here and there. Like there'll be sometimes when you have the ball in your half and you want to see, for example, up top is your strikers, anyone extra striker is your right wing man marked. Stuff like that you'd want to see, but it's much less. Like telebroadcast, you have to basically glance down like almost every other half, or I'll say 2-3 seconds or something, just to see the general gist of the gameplay. So that is what I'd recommend co-op. Now in terms of the height, what I'd say is you want the camera angle to be as high as possible, so you get more of a bird's eye view, because if the camera angle is more lower, it's more slanted. If you think about that, imagine if you're sitting in a football match, right? If you're watching the football match, you can't see this player and that player behind in the perception. But the higher the camera angle goes, you can then see the difference. So that is more important, especially for dribbling. The camera height is very important. The most underestimated thing I would say is more important than camera zoom is camera height. You want to create that bird's eye kind of view so you can see the distance between players, pass for through ball, etc, etc. Now the camera zoom. Now I personally leave this on 0. Now just for a bit of a reference, I am sitting like arm's length away from a 27-inch monitor. I know the best is probably a 24-inch, but I have a 27-inch monitor. I like it because it's nice and big and I can see it. I use 0 zoom. I would recommend using 0 zoom first, and then if you need to, then incrementally move it upwards. Now, if you have, like, for example, I've got a TV here, 40-inch TV, I still play on co-op, right? But if I'm going to play on this TV, even though it's got really bad, not bad MS, it's still about 50 ms, not that bad. It's not like a 1 ms monitor, for example. But if you're sitting in front of a massive TV, there's no point using telebroadcast. So you might as well use, so I used to have a 40-inch TV right in front of me, and I used to legit sit there and I used to play and I used to move my head left and right, shambles. But I used to do that, and I used to do that with a co-op camera angle. If you have, let's say, a 21-inch TV and you're sitting pretty close and you know that you can't see that much of the pitch, then increase the camera zoom. I'd rather you play co-op, single player camera angle co-op. Don't forget, camera settings have to be custom here. I'd rather you play co-op and you have it fully zoomed in than use telebroadcast and for it to be zoomed out. And also, if you look at the bottom right hand side just below over here, look at the co-op camera angle. It's a very top down kind of view, but you can see with the other camera angles, like dynamic is too zoomed in. Okay, pro, you can't use this. Broadcast, it's slanted. Now when a camera angle is slanted, you can't tell perception clearly. Now, the best I can probably do is probably draw this out, okay? Because people always forget this. It's perception of what your eyes see, which is also important. People always don't mention this. Now, the distance between these two players could be greater. It looks like here they're right next to each other. That's the perception that you're seeing there. But in reality, they could be this far apart if you have more of a top-down view. So that is why, for example, I wouldn't recommend a very slanted camera angle. So telebroadcast and tele, both of them are equally well. The reason why I say telebroadcast because a lot of the pro players use it, and then if someone is starting the game, they look at a pro's player settings and then automatically copy what they're doing. but I would recommend co-op all the time for every go mode. Co-op with your friends if you're playing single player, etc, etc. Do not use the EA Sports game cam unless you want to lose in FIFA. And that is the camera settings. The rest of them I don't really use that much. The power shot zoom, now it's annoying. You can basically power shot spam and cancel. I leave it on. Because sometimes I'm not really, I'll be honest, a lot of the time when I play, I'm not really concentrating that much. I'm normally reading the chat or doing something else. I'm not really paying attention. For me personally, I wouldn't recommend this. But if someone has the power shot, I can move my goalkeeper or get ready to counter it. That's the only reason why I have it on. And because everyone has it on off, most people don't do that power shot spam thing anymore. So yeah. One thing that you can do to help that is the radar. I make it white and red. I mean, I suppose also it depends if you're colorblind and everything. But I just make it white and red. I think it makes it easier for me to see. Red's just a bit more. Red's like COD. That's the way I associate it. Like, you know, red is an enemy in COD in the radar. Same thing for FIFA. And I use white because white is a pretty prominent color against the transparent kind of 40-50% opacity of the radar, the grey kind of grey color, and also against the white pitch. So I personally prefer white. It's much easier for me to see, and most of the time I use a white pitch, a white kit. So it's easy for me to correlate as well. So I can look at my kit and I can look at the players, and they can just that split second. You're talking about very marginal things here, but over time it does really help because you know what to look for immediately rather than looking for the player itself. For the player indicator size, I use the player name. There's no point using this an online ID or player number. You want to see if Neymar has the ball. You want to know that Neymar has the ball. That way you know you can push Neymar onto. You can't push Neymar onto his weak foot. If Mbappe has the ball, I know, okay, he hasn't got the good left foot, so I push him on the left foot. So that is very important. Don't use the online ID and don't use the player number. It is pointless. I use player name and indicator. Now, this one is an important one. Now, default, as you can see, it's hard to see which player selected. Now, what I do is I actually leave this on large. And it's not as big as you actually think. And I think it should be the default size. Now, this does make the player names bigger as well. But the benefit of this is you can see who's being switched to. You have to move your head in closer to see what's going on. If you use the next switch defender indicator, that's going to increase in size as well. So you know where on earth your player is and where on earth the next player that you're going to switch to is as well, because it's quite visibly quite large. This used to be a feature only for, I think there used to be another feature set, I think for accessibility, and I believe they moved it this year. So it used to be an accessibility actually. And this is where you can also, by the way, if you do suffer from any form of color blindness, you can also change it. But like this player indicator size, no one used to think about it because it used to be there. So I leave mine on large. I think it's the best thing for me to do. And then that is pretty much it. And these, don't really touch them. And that is the rest. It doesn't matter about the rest, to be honest, too much. It won't make that much of a difference. The only other thing I would say is, anything here? No, this is just for offline. By the way, this doesn't affect your actual match online. So people always think, oh, does it affect it? If you are going to stream, make sure you turn all the EA music, disable all the music. That way you don't get done for copyright. You can try to change your commentary language, should I say, if you like to. I used to use Spanish before, it's been more motivating as opposed to English. It's kind of boring, listen to the same old commentary again and again and again. And just the final thing I wanted to mention in regards to, what did I want to say? Oh yeah, in terms of the actual settings. So they will be fine. What I would say is just finally go into game settings, go to visual, and the only thing I would say is turn on the bottom one, which is the controller. It's over here, input delay. Now, I leave mine on input only, so you only have one controller. You can't change the visibility, but this is actually very important. So if you watch back your gameplay, at least you know what buttons you're pressing. But that is just kind of the game overview and what game settings to use and best camera angles. I hope you enjoyed it. Don't forget, if you want to see more in-depth video regarding this, where I compare the co-op camera angle and I explain to you visually why it's better than the tele broadcast, and I show the distance, the gaps and everything. Make sure you see my Patreon series, patreon.com/NilGuides, and we've already started the Division 10 to Elite Division series, and you can sign up here. If you don't get better after 1 month, I'll refund the money. That is, of course, the Nil Guides guarantee. Thanks for watching. Take it easy, of course. Catch you next time. Peace out, guys.